It happened in an instant. The kind of moment that slices through the hum of a busy restaurant like a sharp knife. The elegant clinking of forks and the gentle murmur of conversation came to an abrupt halt. A gasp erupted from a nearby table as a tray tipped and a full cup of steaming coffee came crashing down, not onto the floor, but onto the crisp, white, obviously expensive shirt of a man who looked like he'd stepped straight off the cover of Forbes magazine. The waitress froze, eyes wide, her hand still hovering in the air where the tray had just been. Time itself seemed to pause. Forks stopped mid-air. People turned in slow motion to look at what had just happened. His shirt, a sleek designer button-down, spotless just seconds ago, was now ruined. A long brown stain snaked from his chest to his waist. The man's jaw tightened. Slowly, he stood up, brushing the front of his shirt, though it was pointless. "Do you even know how much this shirt costs?" he snapped, his voice low but thunderous in the sudden silence. Every eye in the restaurant was now locked on the table. The waitress's name was Sarah, just 22 years old, and this was only her second week on the job. She'd been clumsy all day, nerves constantly dancing in her stomach. It was supposed to be a fresh start for her. She had just moved to the city with her sick mother and a head full of hope. This job wasn't just a job, it was their survival. Now her hands were trembling. Her lips parted, as if to speak, but her voice wouldn't come out. I'm so sorry, sir," she finally managed, her eyes focused on the ground, too ashamed to look up. The manager rushed over, already pale. "Mr. Grant, please, we'll take care of this. Sarah's new. I promise this will be corrected immediately." The man, Richard Grant, turned his eyes sharply toward him. "Is this the kind of service you think your guests deserve?" he said coldly. "I came here for peace. Instead, I'm humiliated." Sarah's breathing grew heavier. Her legs felt weak. She had no defense. It was her fault. And this wasn't just some regular customer. This was Richard Grant, the billionaire tech investor, a man whose name was whispered in meetings and headlines. The kind of man who could destroy someone's future with a single phone call. The silence deepened. The restaurant felt like a courtroom now, and Sarah stood at the center of it all. Guilty, helpless, and completely exposed. Tears welled up in her eyes. She didn't speak. She didn't move. What could she say? What could she possibly do to make this better? Then something strange happened. Richard paused. His angry glare softened just a little. He looked at her more closely, at the waitress with flushed cheeks and watery eyes, her uniform a size too big, her shoes slightly worn. She wasn't arrogant or careless. She was just scared. He tilted his head. His fingers stopped brushing his shirt. He didn't say another word. The manager prepared himself to hear Richard explode. Sarah braced herself to be fired. But instead, Richard took a step back. What he said next would leave everyone in that restaurant stunned, and by the end of the week, the whole internet would be talking about it. For a few painful seconds, it felt like the entire restaurant was holding its breath. Everyone expected Richard Grant, the billionaire investor with a reputation for being ruthless in boardrooms and brutally honest in interviews, to explode. Instead, he simply stared at Sarah. Something in his expression changed. His eyes, once sharp with irritation, now seemed curious. "You're new here?" he asked, voice low but clear. Sarah hesitated. She wasn't sure if she should answer. Was this a trap? "Yes, sir," she replied quietly. "Second week." There was a long pause. "I see," he said, nodding slightly. Then he looked at his shirt again, the dark coffee stains still spreading, the fabric ruined. He sighed, not angrily this time, but like someone realizing something more important was happening. "Do you know how many mistakes I've made when I started out?" he asked aloud. not just to Sarah, but to the entire room. Now everyone was really confused. People looked at each other. Phones that had been ready to record a viral meltdown were still pointed toward the scene, but no one was sure what they were filming anymore. I once emailed confidential investor details to the wrong person, he continued, chuckling softly. Cost me thousands, nearly lost everything. He looked directly at Sarah. I didn't get yelled at. I got taught. That's why I'm standing here today. Sarah didn't know what to say. Her heart was racing. Was he defending her? The manager stepped in again, awkwardly trying to navigate the situation. Mr. Grant, I assure you, this won't happen again. We'll handle it internally. Richard raised a hand to stop him. I know it won't happen again, he said, because she'll learn from it. He turned back to Sarah. Tell me, do you plan to stay in this job long term? She blinked, confused by the question. I'm saving up. I want to study hotel management. Maybe run my own place someday. A small smile played at the edge of Richard's lips. Then this is the perfect first lesson. The silence in the restaurant melted away into whispers of disbelief. Some people smiled. Others were just stunned. The man who could have destroyed a career with a single complaint had just turned the moment into a mentoring lesson. One guest at a nearby table whispered, "Did he really just say that?" Another murmured, "That waitress is lucky." But Sarah didn't feel lucky. Not yet. She was still processing everything. The fear, the embarrassment, and now, this strange, sudden turn of kindness. "Thank you," she said softly, still unsure whether she was dreaming. Richard nodded. "Bring me another coffee," he said calmly. "Same order. But this time, walk slower." A few quiet chuckles rippled through the restaurant. Then, to everyone's surprise, he added, "And bring one for yourself. You've earned a 5-minute break." Sarah's eyes widened. "Sir? You heard me," he said, sitting back down and loosening his tie slightly. "Let's talk. I want to know more about the girl who's brave enough to keep standing here after all this." And just like that, the tension in the room dissolved. Guests returned to their meals. The staff exhaled in relief. But Sarah's world had just changed. This wasn't just a lucky moment. It was something far bigger than she could have imagined. And it was only the beginning. Sarah walked slowly back to the counter, still trembling. Her hands were cold. Her heart hadn't stopped racing since the coffee spilled. She poured 2 fresh cups, one for Mr. Grant and one for herself, exactly how he'd ordered it. Black, no sugar. As she approached his table again, she could feel dozens of eyes still watching, some pretending not to stare, others openly curious. But this time, she wasn't shaking from fear. She was simply stunned. She placed the cups down gently. "I can stand if you prefer, sir," she said quietly. Richard glanced up. "I said sit. You need a minute." She obeyed, cautiously sitting across from him. It felt unreal. Just 5 minutes ago, she thought she was going to be fired. Now she was having coffee with one of the richest men in the country. "I'm Richard, by the way," he said, offering a hand. "Sarah," she replied, shaking it gently. "So, Sarah," he began, leaning back in his chair, "you want to study hospitality?" She nodded. "I do. My mom's been sick, so college had to wait. I took this job to help cover the bills and save up. Honestly, I didn't expect much. Just trying to survive." Richard's eyes softened. "My mother worked 2 jobs when I was young. I know what that feels like." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "You? Struggled?" He chuckled. "Badly. I used to bus tables in a diner that didn't even have air conditioning. My shoes would stick to the floor in the summer." Sarah smiled for the first time. It was a small, almost invisible smile, but it was there. "I once dropped a tray of soup on a congressman's lap," he said. She laughed now, shaking her head. "No way." "Oh yeah, got yelled at, humiliated, thought it was over for me. But someone pulled me aside and said, "If you survive this, you'll survive worse." That stuck with me. Sarah sipped her coffee slowly, still unsure how this conversation was real. She'd looked at rich people as untouchable, cold, distant. But here he was, relaxed, human, even warm. "But you didn't yell at me," she said. "You could have ruined my life in seconds." He shrugged. "I've ruined enough things chasing perfection. These days, I try to do better." There was a pause between. Sarah felt her throat tighten. "I wanted to run, trust me." "But you didn't," he repeated. The clinking of plates and casual conversation filled the restaurant again. But this table had its own rhythm, a quiet exchange between two people from completely different worlds, brought together by spilled coffee and unexpected grace. Richard glanced at his watch. "I've got a meeting in 15 minutes, he said. "But before I go, I want to give you something." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a sleek black card with a silver logo on it. "This is my foundation's contact card," he said. "We fund scholarships, internships, and training programs. Email them. I'll let them know you're coming." Sarah stared at the card like it was made of gold. "Are you serious?" she asked. "I don't joke about futures," he replied, "especially not when they look like yours." She didn't know what to say. Tears welled up again, but this time, they weren't from fear or shame. Sarah stared at the sleek black card in her hand like it was something out of a dream. It had her name written on the back in silver ink, along with an email address and a phone number. She looked up. "Why are you doing this for me?" Richard smiled, but it wasn't a cocky billionaire grin. It was something softer. "Because someone once did it for me," he said. "And because people like you, people who don't give up even after the worst moments, are worth it. You deserve more than just an apology or a second cup of coffee." With that, he stood up and adjusted his coat. "Remember what I told you. Mistakes don't define you. How you respond to them does." Then, as if nothing monumental had happened, he gave a small nod to the restaurant manager and walked out the door. The moment he left, the air inside the restaurant seemed to shift. The tension that had built up earlier dissolved completely, replaced by something else: admiration, inspiration, maybe even awe. Co-workers approached Sarah with wide eyes. "Did that really just happen? Girl, he gave you his personal card? You're not fired?" Sarah smiled through her tears and nodded. "Not even close." Later that evening, after her shift, she sat at a tiny kitchen table in her apartment, the black card still clutched in her fingers. Her mom, wrapped in a blanket on the couch, asked gently, "How was work today?" Sarah looked at her. "You won't believe me, even if I told you." She explained everything: the spill, the yelling, the silence, the unexpected kindness, and the scholarship opportunity. Her mom listened, mouth slightly open in shock. When Sarah was finished, her mother whispered, maybe this is the beginning we've been praying for." The next morning, Sarah sent an email to the foundation. She didn't expect a reply right away, but within hours, her phone buzzed. "Sarah, we've been informed about your situation. Mr. Grant has personally recommended you. A representative will call you by the end of the day to schedule an interview. Welcome to your next chapter." She nearly dropped the phone. By the end of that week, she had a virtual interview. 2 days later, an official scholarship letter arrived. Tuition for a 2-year hotel management course, fully covered. Not only that, but the foundation also placed her in a paid internship at a luxury hotel owned by one of Grant's companies. It wasn't just charity. It was a path. Within a month, Sarah was attending classes during the day and working at the hotel in the evenings. Her coworkers were kind, her mentors supportive. Slowly, her confidence began to grow. The same hands that once shook, holding a coffee tray, now managed guest check-ins with grace. She started keeping a journal, not about what went wrong, but what went right. And at the top of the first page, she wrote, "Sometimes the worst day of your life is just the door to the best one." But her story wasn't done yet, because Richard Grant's kindness didn't just change her life. It sent ripples across the internet, the media, and even other struggling workers who had lost hope. And it all started with a mistake. Like, comment, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. And don't forget to turn on the bell icon